Hi kids! Today we're going to read the last chapter of Meet Kirsten by Janet Shaw. This is called A Peek into the Past, and we're going to be looking back all the way back to 1854. So when Kirsten's family came to America, they fit all of their belongings into two big trunks. If your family decided to move to another country, could your family do that? How would you know what to bring with you? What would you leave behind? One of your relatives probably had to make decisions like these, because there is a story like Kirsten's in nearly every American family. Most people who live in the United States today are relatives who were immigrants, people who left their home countries and moved to America to start a new life. They may have settled here more than 100 years ago, or they may have come more recently. Immigrants still come to the United States today. Many of the early immigrants came from countries where farmland was poor. People were starving because they could not grow enough food. Like Kirsten and her family, they came to America because they wanted new land and a chance for a better life. Immigrants who had already come to America wrote letters back home to their neighbors and relatives telling them that life in America was good. The land is rich, they wrote. The grass is so thick that in one day we can cut enough to feed a cow for a whole winter. They encouraged others to join them on the frontier in places like Minnesota, where there was plenty of good land for everyone who was willing to work hard. People who decided to go to America could bring only their most important things with them. They filled their big trunks with clothes, blankets, tools, and food for the trip. They also packed things that would remind them of the people they loved and the places they left behind. It says, a Swedish family reads a letter from relatives in America. A woman like Mama might have made room for a beautiful cloth that her mother had woven, or for a bowl that her father had carved, or for the wooden molds she always used to decorate butter or cheese. What do you think a girl like Kirsten might have squeezed in? When their trunks were finally packed, a family had to travel to a port city and wait until a ship like the Eagle was ready to sail for America. These ships were filled with cargo like lumber and iron, so there was only a small place for the people. Immigrants traveled in a part of the ship called steerage. People in steerage were cramped and uncomfortable. The ceiling was so low that a man couldn't stand up straight. There were no windows for light and no fresh air. There were no bathrooms, and it was hard to get clean water for drinking or washing. Families slept on narrow wooden bunks that were covered with straw. Often, 2 or more people shared a bunk that was smaller than your bed is. Usually, a mother cooked her family's meal on the ship's deck. At the beginning of the voyage, a family's food was fresh, but there was no refrigerators in 1854, so the food soon spoiled. Before the passengers reached land, even their salted meat was rotten and their bread was moldy. Still, they ate this food because it was all they had. When Kirsten came to America, a very fast ship could sail across the ocean in 6 weeks. If the wind was bad, the trip would take much longer. Sometimes immigrants died in storms and shipwrecks on the way to America. And even with good weather, many passengers got sick. Some of them got terrible diseases such as cholera. And this says, immigrants arriving in America. Once an immigrant family arrived safely in America, the dangers of the trip were not over. Most immigrants could not speak English, and they did not have anyone to help them buy fresh food or train tickets for their trip to the frontier. Sometimes thieves robbed or cheated the immigrants. See, and this picture is a map of how immigrants came from Sweden. So this is Sweden over here, and this is the United States. And right here is Wisconsin, where we are. And next to it, this red spot is Minnesota, and that is Uncle Olaf's farm. Immigrating to America in 1854 was certainly dangerous, but it was exciting too. If Kirsten's family had stayed in Sweden, she would never have seen the ocean or even a town more than 20 miles from the place she was born. Because they became immigrants, she traveled halfway around the world. She saw machines she had never dreamed of, like trains and paddle wheel boats. She saw busy cities like New York and Chicago. She saw long stretches of open prairie, miles of rich farmland, and at the end of her journey, she had a new home in a new land with a life full of opportunity ahead of her. The end.